Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in your testimony, several of you talked about federal regulations driving up the costs and preventing colleges from innovating in ways that would make college more affordable. If that's so, then we absolutely should consider changes. But if we're going to loosen federal regulations, we ought to be sure that the colleges are going to pass those savings on to the students. And it seems that some colleges are not willing to do that. Now, at a hearing 2 years ago, I asked Dr. LeBlanc to explain why his college offered an online program that ran a 22% profit margin. And Dr. LeBlanc responded that his university uses the profits to subsidize the college's campus-based program. Bloomberg, the Chronicle of Higher Education, and others have reported that the profits help build a new student center, a dining hall, and an Olympic-sized swimming pool. In other words, the lower cost of an online education wasn't passed along to the students who got the online education. Online education was a cash cow for whatever else the school wanted to buy. Now, this year, at a hearing on the cost of compliance with federal regulators, the president of Vanderbilt said they could save a lot of money if federal regulations were cut. So during the hearing, I asked him, would he commit to using the savings from reduced regulatory costs to bring down the prices for students? And the president wouldn't agree to do that. Instead, he said the university should have the freedom to spend the savings wherever they wanted to spend the savings. So, Mr. Merisotis, you're an expert on higher education policy. Does current law provide enough incentives for colleges to reduce costs for students?
No.
Well, that was easy.
So look,
Painful.
here
Yes.
part of the problem is that there are not incentives to lower costs and prices built into the federal formula. There should be rewards built in to the way in which the aid approval process works, so that the institutions that are doing a better job of serving students by producing better outcomes, learning outcomes, employment outcomes, student satisfaction outcomes, that should be a part of the equation. But I think the bigger question here, Senator Warren, is that we really don't have a common understanding of what affordability is in higher education.
Well, I want to stop you there. Wait, I want to underline what you just talked about before we go into the different definitions of affordability. Because the chairman quite rightly pointed out the federal government is putting $136 billion into our schools every single year. And I think what you just described is the schools have no skin in the game. That whether they do a good job or a bad job, as long as they can skirt past their accreditors, they're going to be just fine. They're going to keep 100% of the money. And their incentives then are to attract students in other ways, whether it's Olympic-sized swimming pools or whatever else it is they're going to offer. That's where the incentives lie for the schools right now. And if we don't have schools with some skin in the game, that's not going to change.
And increasing competition so that we expand our understanding of who the providers are of post-secondary learning, I think, is one way to help bring down those costs, creating some incentives so that there is more competition for the college and universities to actually do exactly what you're talking about is very important. My point about affordability is pretty simple, which is that we're all for it, but none of us actually knows what it means. It's hard to find someone who can say, I'm not for a more affordable system. But when we then ask the question, what does affordability mean? We have no common understanding of what that is. I think that is a very important part of the federal policy dialogue. What is an affordable education? What does it actually mean from the student perspective? What is an appropriate amount of money that you could contribute either from earnings or savings to your own education? And if you can't do that, then how do we allocate resources to make sure that if you're low income, if you're a working mother, if you're someone who doesn't have the capacity to do that the government's going to be able to support you? Affordability is an eye of the beholder issue for us right now. You can get a bachelor's degree for a few $1,000s a year in tuition or for tens of $1,000s a year in tuition. And this issue, I think, of defining affordability is one of the most important issues we've got to tackle in national policy.
You know, I appreciate that you may be able to say that we can't say exactly where the center of the bullseye is and exactly where the resting point is that we can say college education has become affordable. But I guarantee we can say that it is becoming less and less and less affordable every year. The numbers are pretty clear on that. When it keeps keeps getting more and more expensive, and more middle-class families are having to borrow more and more money just to get their kids through school. I think we can say this is a problem that is getting worse and that we need to turn it around and start pushing it in the other direction. You know, I just want to say, because I'm going to run out of time here, if we reduce regulatory costs for college, those savings must be passed on to our students. And right now, colleges will not commit to doing that. Our colleges face a lot of different pressures to recruit more applicants, to raise academic standards, to beat out their competitors, but there is almost no pressure to improve affordability, and federal policy does not help on that. It's easy to prioritize a swimming pool or a dining hall or a climbing wall over a decrease in tuition because the federal government is right there with the grants and with the loans to make it possible. We need the federal government to back us up on when it comes to federal loans and Pell Grants. Colleges need some skin in the game. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.